Friends of Islam, once again the Islamic faith is here before you to share Islamic knowledge. We hope this will inspire your daily activities. Don't forget to click the subscribe button and activate notifications for new videos so you don't miss the latest updates from the channel of Islamic faith. Dear brothers and sisters in Islam, today we will discuss the story of thousands of nuns in Italy who decided to convert to Islam after discovering an ancient manuscript. This manuscript contains an explanation of who Jesus truly was. Before we continue, let's write a prayer in the comments as a sign of our love for the Prophet Muhammad. Peace and blessings be upon him. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video so more people can receive guidance. In a small village surrounded by green hills in Italy stood an old monastery that had stood firm for several centuries. This monastery was a place where peace was deeply felt, especially with the soft ringing of church bells breaking the silence of the village each morning. The nuns living there led a simple life, far from the noise and rush of the outside world. Their daily routine was filled with prayers, meditation, and dedication to the small community around the monastery. Among the nuns was a young woman named Maria Elena. She was in her 20s, and her natural beauty often fascinated people. Her long black hair was always hidden under her veil, but her expressive eyes radiated vitality and deep curiosity. Maria was known for her intellect. She was often the first to ask questions or share thoughts during small monastery discussions. Yet behind her warm smile, Maria felt a strange emptiness in her heart that she couldn't understand. One morning, Maria was assigned to clean the old library in the monastery. The library was rarely visited. Its wooden shelves were filled with dusty old books, and the atmosphere inside was always quiet. While sweeping the floor, Maria accidentally knocked over a stack of books lying in the corner. As she bent down to pick them up, she noticed a book hidden among the pile of old documents. The book looked unusual. Its cover was made of worn-out material, its colors faded, and its corners fragile. The writing on the cover was barely legible, but Maria could make out a few words written in faded golden ink. The true life. Maria's heart beat faster. Carefully, she brushed the dust off the book and slowly opened it. The pages felt rough and gave off a distinct old scent. The writings inside were in an ancient script Maria had never seen before. She read the first few paragraphs but quickly realized the language was different. However, what caught her attention most were a few symbols and phrases that seemed like hidden messages. Driven by burning curiosity, Maria sat on the library floor, immersing herself in the mystery hidden within the ancient pages. Each page she turned revealed something new, something that felt like it spoke directly to her soul. There were words about the oneness of God, the meaning of life, and a messenger who would bring the message of truth. Though she couldn't fully understand the contents of the manuscript, Maria felt that this book held a secret of extraordinary importance. That day marked the beginning of great changes in her life. She took the book to her small room in the monastery and read it in silence every night after prayer. The deeper she delved into the manuscript, the stronger her feeling grew that the book's content was very different from what she had been taught. On the other hand, Maria knew keeping the book was risky. If one of the other nuns found it, it could be taken from her, and she wouldn't be able to finish reading it. Yet Maria's curiosity was far greater than her fear. Each night, she wrote down the parts she found important, trying to grasp the meaning of the words that often echoed in her heart like riddles. Over time, Maria began to feel that her life might not be what she had always imagined. She started to question the beliefs she had been taught and dig deeper to discover what she truly believed in. Meanwhile, life in the monastery continued as usual. The other nuns had no idea that an extraordinary spiritual journey was beginning in Maria's small room. Her burning curiosity led her again and again to open the ancient manuscript she had found. Each time her fingers touched its fragile pages, her heart trembled, as if she were drawing closer to a long-hidden truth. She felt something unexplainable, as if the manuscript was calling her to understand the secrets hidden in the ancient writings. The manuscript didn't just tell a story. It revealed concepts so deep that everything felt new and confusing to Maria. In the middle of the night, while the monastery was silent, Maria would sit in the corner of her room. A small candle lit the fragile pages she was so captivated by. She read word by word, line by line, trying to understand the meaning behind every sentence. The more she read, the clearer it became that the manuscript's content differed greatly from the teachings she had learned. One concept repeated many times was the oneness of God, that God is one, without partners or equals. This was the central message of many of the manuscript's writings. Maria sat in silence, reflecting on what she had just read. In her former faith, she had been taught the concept of the Trinity, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. But what was written in the manuscript contradicted those teachings. She felt as if she had found something long lost, something she needed to fill the emptiness in her heart. But despite her curiosity, Maria also knew the danger that lurked. If this thought was discovered by others in the monastery, she could face serious consequences. Nonetheless, her curiosity was far stronger than her fear. Each night, Maria continued her search. Weeks passed, and she began to write down key moments from the manuscript. Carefully, she made small copies of certain passages she found especially valuable, writing them in her notebook with a trembling hand in the quiet of night. In her small room, Maria felt she was walking a path toward a truth that had been hidden from her. Among the many discoveries, one passage truly shocked her. A prophecy about the last prophet, who would bring the message of truth to mankind. The name of the prophet was Muhammad. Maria read this passage over and over, making sure she had not misunderstood. It was the first time she saw that name mentioned in a context different from the one she was used to. She had only known Muhammad as a figure from another religion. Yet in this manuscript, his name was mentioned with such respect and glory. Driven by growing curiosity, Maria tried to understand more about who Muhammad truly was. Of the monastery was carefully observed, and any deviation from the norm could lead to serious consequences. Maria understood the risks she was taking, but something inside her was stronger than fear, a longing for truth that she could no longer ignore. She began to see Islam not as a foreign or distant faith, but as a path that resonated with her soul. The more she read, the more she felt her heart soften and open to new understanding. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, whom she had once only heard about in passing and often in a negative context, now appeared before her in a new light, as a figure of immense compassion, wisdom, and unwavering devotion to God. Each night, Maria would sit in her small room with the Quran in her hands, its verses shining in the dim candlelight. The words seemed to speak directly to her, answering her most intimate questions, calming her fears, and stirring in her a peace she had never known. She found in Islam a clarity and purity that resonated with her deep desire for spiritual connection. Despite the growing risks, she began to pray in secret, mimicking the Islamic way of worship she had seen in books and online resources. Her prayers were clumsy at first, uncertain, but filled with sincerity. And each time she bowed in prostration, tears flowed from her eyes. She was overwhelmed not by fear, but by a profound sense of coming home. Maria's transformation was slow and deeply personal. She did not yet tell anyone, but inside, she was no longer the same. She now lived with a new light in her heart, a new purpose guiding her steps. Islam had found a place in her soul, and although her journey had just begun, she felt more alive, more awakened than ever before. She didn't know what the future would hold, whether she would stay in the monastery or leave it behind. But one thing she knew for sure: she had found something she could no longer live without, something that gave her life meaning, direction, and peace. She had found Islam. Every aspect of life in the monastery was strictly regulated, and each member was expected to follow traditions without question. Therefore, Maria had to conduct her research with extreme caution. The books she read were always carefully hidden after she finished with them. Even the notes she took were disguised to avoid arousing suspicion. There were nights when fear overwhelmed her. What if she were discovered? What would happen to her? But these fears were always overcome by her powerful desire to seek the truth. Deep in her heart, Maria felt that this journey was something meant for her. When she began to understand that Islam was not just a religion but a complete way of life, her heart grew more resolute. The teachings of Islam about the relationship between human beings and God, between people, and between humanity and the universe seemed so comprehensive and harmonious. In the silence of the night, in the quiet monastery, Maria knew that her life was changing toward something greater, toward the truth she had been seeking. Every time Maria read the Quran, she felt a peace she had never known before. Yet she knew the next step would be very difficult. If she chose to embrace Islam, she would have to confront the world of the monastery she had known as her home. She would also have to face her friends and mentors, people who might not accept her decision easily. Maria stood on the threshold of a crucial decision in her life. On one side was a newfound faith that gave her peace and answered her long-standing questions. On the other side, she understood the immense consequences of her decision. But deep in her heart, Maria knew she could no longer ignore the truth that had been revealed to her. Her journey had only just begun, and although she knew trials awaited her, she was ready to take the next step. After months of inner turmoil and emotional struggle, Maria finally made a decision that would change her life forever. One cold morning, with a trembling heart, she left the monastery and headed to the nearest city. In her hand, she held a slip of paper with the address of a small mosque she had secretly found through an online directory. When she arrived at the mosque, tucked away amid the city's bustle, Maria was greeted by a kind and dignified imam. His face radiated serenity, and his smile carried a warmth that soothed her anxious heart. The imam listened attentively as Maria described her spiritual journey, from discovering ancient manuscripts to secretly studying the Quran in the monastery. She expressed her confusion, her fear, and finally the growing conviction in her heart. With eyes full of compassion, the imam looked at Maria and said softly, "Allah has guided you to this path." These words felt like a warm embrace amid the anxiety that burdened Maria's soul. For the first time, she felt she belonged, accepted as she was with all her questions and doubts. That day marked the beginning of a new chapter in Maria's life, a journey toward the light of the truth she had sought with a sincere heart. Not everyone is given this opportunity. You are one of the chosen, the imam said quietly. Under his guidance, Maria recited the Shahada, the two declarations of faith, with a trembling but confident voice. Warm tears ran down her cheeks. In that moment, Maria felt her heart fill with a peace she had never experienced before. The time of confusion and hesitation that had haunted her for so long disappeared instantly. Yet Maria knew this was only the beginning of a long path. After receiving basic knowledge about Islam from the Imam, Maria returned to the monastery with a firm heart. This time, she was no longer just a nun. She was a Muslim, with a great mission in her heart. Maria understood that the trials ahead would not be easy. She had to live among a community that might not understand or even reject her decision. However, deep inside, Maria felt she could not let the other nuns remain in darkness without sharing the light of truth she had found. In the monastery, Maria continued her regular routine. She performed her duties with full responsibility, but now with a new spirit and purpose. In silence, she began to pay closer attention to the behavior and character of each nun. She waited for the right moment to approach them, not with force, but with kindness and love. One day, Maria made her first step. She decided to speak with her closest friend in the monastery, a nun named Sophia. They sat in a small garden behind the monastery, under the shade of an old tree that had witnessed many personal conversations. In this relaxed setting, Maria gently began the conversation. In a quiet voice, she touched on the concept of monotheism that she had learned from the ancient manuscripts. "Sophia, have you ever thought about the nature of God? That He is one, that He neither begets nor was begotten?" Maria asked softly. Sophia was silent for a moment. The look in her eyes showed that the question had touched her thoughts. "Sometimes I feel like there's something I don't fully understand," Sophia replied quietly, "as if there's a deeper truth I haven't found yet." Maria smiled gently. With great patience, she began to explain the key points she had discovered, including prophecies about the Prophet Muhammad found in ancient texts. Sophia listened carefully, as if Maria's words opened a door that had long been locked in her mind. A light appeared in her eyes, as though her heart was being stirred by a truth she had never heard before. For Maria, this was the first step in a long journey to bring the light of truth to those around her. And she was sure that as long as God was with her, she would never be alone. Although Sophia was hesitant at first, she began to feel drawn to the teachings Maria shared. Gradually, Maria began to approach the other nuns in the same way. She never forced them, but always engaged in conversations with kindness, patience, and respect for their beliefs. Over the next few months, several nuns began to show interest. They were curious and wanted to learn more about the teachings Maria had brought. Every night, Maria spent time in prayer, asking God for strength and wisdom to continue her mission in this difficult environment. Maria knew this task would not be easy, but she believed that the truth would always find its way. Slowly, small changes began to appear in the monastery. Some of the nuns started asking more questions about Islam. Some even asked Maria to teach them verses of the Quran she had memorized. Seeing their hearts begin to open, Maria felt confident that Allah was gently guiding them toward the light, the music of truth. However, not everyone in the monastery welcomed the changes with open arms. Some of the senior nuns began to treat Maria with suspicion. They noticed that the atmosphere in the monastery was slowly changing, and Maria seemed to be at the center of it. Small conflicts started to arise among the nuns who felt uncomfortable with this new teaching. Whispers of suspicion began to spread. Nevertheless, Maria remained patient and steadfast in her faith. She knew that trials were part of her path and that Allah was always with her, giving her the strength to face every challenge. For Maria, Dawah was not only about conveying the teachings of Islam, it was also about embodying the love and kindness that Islam teaches. She believed that with compassion and sincerity, even the hardest hearts could be softened. Maria began her dua wisely and carefully. She understood that change could not be forced, especially in a monastic environment so deeply rooted in centuries of tradition and belief. With a sincere heart, Maria continued her mission, hoping that one day, the truth she had discovered would also illuminate the hearts of those still in the dark. For hundreds of years, the traditions of the monastery remained strong. But Maria chose a different approach. She reached out to her fellow sisters through simple conversations. In these talks, Maria didn't immediately preach Islam. Instead, she began to share her personal reflections on the human condition. Have you ever felt like something is missing in this life? Maria asked one evening as they sat together in the garden. Some of the monks were reading. The monks stopped and looked closely at Maria. Drawing closer to God, Maria continued, happens not only through regular prayer but through a deeper understanding of who God truly is in this life. Her words caught their attention. She knew that her approach had to be patient and filled with love. Private conversations with the more open-minded nuns went well. However, though some initially accepted her kindly, many rejected her and doubted her. Some even thought Maria had gone astray. They looked at her with suspicion, and some began to avoid her. Nevertheless, Maria remained steadfast. She responded to rejection not with anger, but with kindness and gentleness. There was a time when Maria found herself surrounded by more conservative nuns. One of them asked her sharply, "What are you looking for, Maria? Are you not satisfied with life in the monastery?" Maria looked at them calmly and answered, "I am only seeking the truth. If what I have found turns out to be false, I want us to discuss it together." While most of the nuns remained skeptical, there was one figure in the monastery who was highly respected, Sister Teresa. She had devoted decades of her life to the monastery and was seen as a role model, a source of wisdom and guidance for everyone. Maria knew that approaching Teresa wouldn't be easy. She did it very carefully. Maria spent time with her whenever she could, helping with monastery duties and attentively listening to her stories. One day, while sorting through old documents in the library, Maria decided to speak more openly. "I want to share something I've discovered, and hear your thoughts, Sister Teresa," Maria said gently. Maria showed Teresa some notes from an ancient manuscript she had found. They began to discuss them in detail, especially the concept of Tawhid, the oneness of God. At first, Teresa was skeptical, but she listened carefully. "I've never thought of it this way," she finally said. "But there is something in these words that touches my heart." Over the following nights, Teresa secretly began reading Maria's notes and studying the Quran. After a few weeks, she began to change. She started asking Maria more questions and even reconsidered things she once thought impossible. Then, one night, Teresa took a bold step. With tears streaming down her cheeks, she looked at Maria and, with a trembling voice, uttered the two declarations of faith, the Shahada. "I feel peace. This is the answer I've been searching for," said Teresa. Teresa's decision became a turning point in the monastery. Being a highly respected figure, her transformation had a significant impact on the other nuns. They began to see that what Maria spoke about was not a threat, but something worth exploring. From then on, Teresa began to accompany Maria in her outreach. Gently and lovingly, they spoke to the other nuns, answered their questions, and helped them work through their doubts. Gradually, the atmosphere in the monastery began to shift. Though not all nuns embraced Islam, many started opening their hearts and studying the teachings they once considered foreign. The suspicion that once cloaked the monastery gave way to meaningful discussions and deep searches for truth. Yet Maria and Teresa knew the journey ahead would still be long. They faced challenges from external forces, even from church authorities who began to notice the changes in the monastery. Nonetheless, both believed that through patience and prayer, God would guide them and open more hearts to the truth. What began with one, Maria, now became two, then three, until more and more nuns became interested and engaged in deep discussions. They didn't just listen to Maria's explanations. They started opening their hearts to Islam through personal experiences and reading the Quran. Maria continued her gentle and wise approach. She never pressured anyone, but instead gave each nun the space to reflect and make her own decision. With full conviction, Maria and Teresa carried on their mission, believing that the light of truth would continue to shine in the hearts of those sincerely seeking the path to God. She once said, "I'm not asking you to believe me. I only want you to find the truth for yourself." Within a few months, nearly half of the monastery's inhabitants had declared the two testimonies of faith, the Shahada. Every time someone embraced Islam, Maria felt indescribable joy. For her, it wasn't just a matter of faith. It was about giving new hope to those who had once doubted and searched for the truth. The monastery, once a symbol of the old faith, was now transforming into a place where the light of Islam shone brightly. The nuns who had embraced Islam began living differently. They continued performing their daily duties, but now they were accompanied by prayer, the recitation of the Quran, and a deepening understanding of Islamic teachings. One of the most touching moments occurred when the adhan, the call to prayer, was heard in the monastery for the first time. A nun who had just embraced Islam had decided to learn how to make the call. Her voice echoed throughout the monastery, bringing an atmosphere of peace that had never been felt before. Tears of joy streamed down the faces of several nuns who heard it, as if their hearts had found a long-lost serenity. The news of the changes within the monastery did not remain within its walls. Whispers began to spread, reaching the ears of the church and the surrounding community. While some responded with awe, many also saw it as a threat. But Maria and the nuns who had embraced Islam were not afraid. They were convinced that the truth they had discovered was a gift, one to be cherished and shared. With determination and kindness, they continued their spiritual journey, hoping that more hearts would one day open to the light of Islam. Soon, the news spread to villages and even major cities across Italy. People spoke about the great transformations that had taken place in the monastery. Many were surprised, some even outraged, especially within the church and among conservative groups. But many were inspired. People who had long doubted their own faith began hearing about the teachings of Islam from a new perspective. Some even came to the monastery, not to criticize, but to learn more about the truth that had transformed the lives of the nuns. Not only did she carry the light of Islam within herself, but she also brought it to places she could never have imagined. When people came with questions, Maria always invited them into a dialogue with an open heart. She never imposed her beliefs, but instead encouraged reflection on the truth. "It's like a small child," she once said to a peasant who came with great curiosity. "We cannot force people to see, but when their eyes are opened, the light becomes impossible to ignore." The path was not easy. As more and more people embraced Islam, Maria faced greater challenges. The church authorities began to notice changes in the monastery and saw them as a threat. Priests from neighboring villages came to speak with Maria and the other nuns, trying to bring them back to their former beliefs. Maria welcomed them respectfully but stood firm in her convictions. In every discussion, she spoke wisely, quoting verses from the Quran and referring to ancient manuscripts she had found. "I'm not against your beliefs," she once told a priest who had approached her in a confrontational tone. "I've just found something that feels closer to the truth, and I hope we can discuss it together." Maria knew her struggle would be long. Each day brought new trials, but her faith in the truth sustained her. With a heart full of belief, she trusted that the light of Islam would continue to shine in the hearts of those who sought the truth. No matter how difficult the path, she believed that every soul who embraced Islam was proof that the truth could not be silenced. What was once a quiet and closed monastery had now become a center of spiritual movement, bringing great change not only to its inhabitants but to the surrounding people. With every step, Maria became more convinced that her path was part of God's divine plan. She believed that when one walks with sincere intentions and a heart full of determination, God will always guide and empower them to face every challenge ahead. Maria Elena, who had once been just a young nun in a small Italian monastery, had now become a figure who inspired thousands. She was originally just a 20-year-old woman who felt something was missing in her life. She experienced unanswered anxiety until she came across an ancient manuscript and a meeting that changed the entire direction of her life. But Maria's path was not easy. She had to face inner doubts, pressure from those around her, and harsh criticism from church authorities. Despite this, Maria did not give up. She stood firm, allowing the light of the truth she had found to shine in her heart and spread to those who were searching for answers. Maria's courage lay in her determination to find the truth, even if it meant leaving behind the comfort and beliefs she had held since childhood. She not only embraced Islam for herself, but shared its message with others with love and tenderness. With extraordinary patience, she was able to change the views of many people, even in the most unexpected places. Maria has now become a symbol that truth knows no boundaries. The light of Islam can touch any heart, regardless of background, profession, or previous beliefs. The monastery, once known only as a place of worship for nuns, has now become a center of spiritual transformation, inspiring many. For Maria, this journey was not the end but the beginning of a greater mission. She believed that each step she took was part of God's plan, and that the truth would always find its way. Now, Maria lived not only as a Muslim but as a pioneer carrying the message of Islam to places that had never been touched before. Her life story teaches us that the search for truth may be long and filled with trials, but with courage, sincerity, and patience, nothing is impossible. Maria not only changed herself but opened the door for many to see the truth that had been hidden behind a veil of doubt. However, Maria's influence extended beyond herself and touched those around her. Her courage and sincerity awakened the hearts of other nuns, the villagers, and even those outside their small circle. May this story serve as a reminder for all of us to never stop seeking the truth. When God gives us guidance, we must have the courage to accept it and follow it with confidence. The light of Islam is meant not only for ourselves but to be spread throughout the world. Let us pray that we are always given the strength to walk the right path, inspire others, and carry the light of Islam wherever we go. For the truth will always find its way, like running water soaking into the deepest places and touching even the hardest of hearts. Though Maria's path was full of trials, she never gave up. Each day she lived with a renewed spirit, not only as a Muslim but as a messenger of truth. Over time, the changes in the monastery became increasingly evident. The nuns who once doubted now began to understand and accept the teachings of Islam. They found peace that once seemed unattainable. In the early morning, the monastery, once filled only with prayers and silence, now echoed with the recitation of the holy verses of the Quran, read with full awareness. Maria and Sister Teresa, now kindred spirits, patiently and lovingly continued to guide the other nuns. They never forced anyone to accept Islam, but the warmth and sincerity of their hearts spoke louder than words. In the early morning, in the monastery that was once filled with prayers and silence, now echoed the recitation of sacred verses from the Quran, read with full awareness. Maria and Sister Teresa, now kindred spirits, continued to patiently and lovingly guide the other nuns. They never forced anyone to accept Islam, but the warmth and sincerity they displayed were clear evidence that the truth brings peace. However, amidst these inspiring changes, pressure from the church authorities intensified. They began to closely monitor the monastery, seeing what was happening as a threat to the centuries-old traditions. Priests from nearby areas were sent to restore order in the monastery. One day, a high-ranking bishop visited the monastery. He requested a private meeting with Maria and Sister Teresa. In a firm tone, he asked, "What are you searching for? Have you abandoned the truth you vowed to protect?" Maria calmly replied, "All we seek is the truest truth. If there is something closer to God, are we not right to follow it?" The long discussion led nowhere, but nothing could shake Maria and Teresa's conviction. They were convinced that what they had discovered and believed in was the undeniable truth. Despite pressure from the church authorities, more and more nuns began to secretly study Islam. They found answers to questions that had long gone unanswered in their lives. Maria realized that her mission was not to change the entire world in an instant. For her, each heart that was touched and found the truth was a priceless victory. Patiently, she continued to spread the light of Islam, believing that God was always with her. Eventually, the monastery, once a symbol of obedience to old traditions, became a place where hearts in search of truth found peace. Maria, Sister Teresa, and other nuns who had embraced Islam lived their lives with determination, meeting every trial with prayer and unshakable faith. Maria's story is proof that truth cannot be silenced. With courage, sincerity, and patience, the light of Islam can shine even in the darkest places. And as long as there are hearts seeking truth, it will always find its way. Despite increasing pressure from the church authorities, Maria and the nuns who converted to Islam remained firm in their beliefs. Every night, they gathered secretly to read the Quran, discuss questions, and support each other. In the silence of the monastery, the sound of sacred verses became a light illuminating their hearts amidst ever more difficult trials. But the situation escalated when word of the changes in the monastery reached the Vatican. The church authorities considered what was happening a serious act of defiance. They sent official representatives to further investigate and determine the fate of the monastery. One cold morning, several emissaries from the church arrived. They gathered all the nuns in the main hall for a large assembly. Though Maria's heart pounded, she remained calm and full of faith. Sister Teresa stood beside her, offering silent support. The cardinal leading the group looked at them sharply and said, "We've heard that foreign teachings have entered this place. Is it true that some of you have abandoned the faith you were meant to uphold?" Maria stepped forward bravely. In a quiet but firm voice, she said, "We have not abandoned God. On the contrary, we have found a path that brings us closer to Him. We embraced Islam because within it we found the truth we had long sought." Maria's words stunned the room. Some nuns who had not yet converted to Islam began silently reflecting, while others lowered their heads, trying to hide their tears. The cardinal paused before speaking again. Do you realize the consequences of this decision? You could be excommunicated from the church. You may lose this place and be seen as traitors. Without hesitation, Maria replied, "We are aware of the consequences. But should we deny the truth just to maintain comfort? If our hearts have found the light, how can we return to the darkness?" Sister Teresa, who had remained silent all this time, finally spoke. "We never intended to go against anyone or disrespect the faith we once held. But we found something that filled the emptiness in our hearts, and we could not ignore it." The debates continued for a long time, but nothing could shake their conviction. Seeing Maria and the other nuns' unwavering resolve, the church authorities decided to take drastic measures. They issued them an ultimatum: renounce Islam and return to their former faith, or permanently leave the monastery. That night, Maria and the Muslim nuns gathered in the chapel where they had once prayed. They supported one another, praying for guidance and protection from Allah. With steadfast hearts, they made the decision to leave the monastery. At dawn, Maria led the small group of Muslim nuns out of the monastery gates. They walked down the cobbled road with faith burning in their hearts. Though leaving the monastery meant losing their home, they believed that Allah would guide them. Their journey was far from over. With the support of the Muslim community in a nearby city, Maria and the nuns began building a new life. They opened their modest home as a place for learning and spreading the teachings of Islam to all who sought the truth. Their story spread far and wide, inspiring many who were restless and searching for answers in their own lives. People from all walks of life began to visit, wanting to hear firsthand about their spiritual journey and the truth they had discovered. For Maria, leaving the monastery was not the end. This was the beginning of a greater mission. Maria understood that her task was not just about herself or her small community, but about spreading the light of Islam to hearts still searching for the truth. In her prayers, she always asked Allah for the strength to remain steadfast and to bring goodness wherever she went, because she believed that, although the world may resist, the truth would always find its way. The story of Maria and the Muslim nuns is proof that the search for truth requires courage, sincerity, and perseverance. And for anyone who sincerely seeks it, Allah will guide them to the eternal light. The journey of Maria and the Muslim nuns is an extraordinary tale of seeking truth, of courage, and unwavering faith. It began with restlessness in the routine of monastic life, and Maria found the light of Islam through an ancient manuscript that completely changed her perspective on life. With humility and patience, she began sharing the truth she had found with her fellow nuns. Despite initial rejection and suspicion, over time the light of Islam touched the hearts of many other nuns, including Sister Teresa, a highly respected figure in the monastery. Together, they formed a small community that firmly embraced Islam, even in the face of strong pressure from church authorities. When confronted with a difficult choice, renounce Islam or leave the monastery, they chose to preserve their faith, proving that truth is far more valuable than worldly comforts. After leaving the monastery, Maria and the Muslim nuns began a new chapter in their lives. They built a simple home, which became a center for learning and teaching, spreading the teachings of Islam to all who were seeking the truth. Their story spread far and wide, inspiring many and proving that with sincerity and courage, the light of truth will always find its path. This story is a reminder that the path to truth is often filled with trials. But for those with strong resolve and sincere hearts, nothing is impossible. Maria and the Muslim nuns show that the light of Islam can reach the heart of any person, even in the most unexpected places. and that the truth will always shine brightly, guiding everyone who sincerely seeks it. May this story inspire all of us to continue seeking the truth, to live our lives with courage, and to carry the light of Islam to every corner of the world. Because, in the end, the true truth will always find its way. Dear friends of the Islamic faith, blessed by Allah, we hope this video was beneficial, and see you in our next video.